Welcome to this tutorial where we will explain how to use the state machine and transitions in CGI Studio. To do so, let us first create an empty sample solution. Let's name it Tabs and then click Finish. Now add 5 new Scene 2D instances. Click the Add a New Scene 2D button and name the first one Scene Menu Tabs, since it will be the location for the tab buttons. Now let us create the scenes for the individual tabs. The first one will be called Scene Home. Then please go ahead and create 3 more: Scene Climate, Scene Phone, and finally Scene Options. Once all new Scene 2D instances have been created, delete the remaining Scene 2D and Scene 3D instances, since we will not require them for this tutorial. Next, drag and drop a solid color node into Scene Home for adding the desired background. First, change the size of the node and set the X value to 1280 and Y to 480. Now also change the color settings. Set the red value to 232 and the green value to 104, and finally the blue value to 80. Next, simply drag and drop a text node into Scene Home to create the title. Once done so, change its position by setting both the X and Y values to 100. Next, change the text to be displayed to Home in the text node properties. Now go ahead and change the text style to your preferred font. Now that the initial scene has been prepared, copy and paste the solid color node as well as the text node also into Scene Climate, Scene Phone, and Scene Options. Select the solid color node and change the fill color property. Set red to 88, green to 116, and blue to 152. Next, we change the displayed text of the text node from Home to Climate in the text node properties. Paste the solid color node and text node into Scene Phone. Let us now adjust the Scene Phone scene. First, change the background color. In Scene Phone, select the solid color node and change the fill color property. Set red to 88, green to 112, and blue to 88. As we have done before, now change the displayed text of the text node from Home to Phone. Paste the solid color node and text node into Scene Options. Now we will adapt the final scene, which is Scene Options. First, we will change the background color again. For this scene, red should be set to 255, green to 216, and blue to 0. Now change the displayed text of the text node from Home to Options. As a next step, we will now create tab buttons in Scene Menu Tabs. To do so, drag and drop the Stack Layout control into Scene Menu Tabs. Now drag and drop a button control below Stack Layout. Then drag and drop a text control into the content of the next button. Set the name of text as to Next. Make sure to set the horizontal alignment to Center. Set the text property to Next, since it will be a button to navigate to the next scene. To adjust the button size, adjust the X value to 100. Drag and drop a group box control below the next button into Stack Layout. Drag and drop a Stack Layout control into the content of the group box. Now that we have our 4 scenes, we need 4 radio buttons. Add 4 radio buttons under the Stack Layout. Then adjust the Y size of the group box to 50 so the radio buttons fit properly. Now change the radio button names according to the scenes. Since we have a home scene, rename one radio button to Tab Home. Similarly, rename the remaining radio buttons to Tab Climate, Tab Phone, and Tab Options. Now we need active and inactive images for the radio buttons. For that, import bitmap resources for all the tab buttons. In Tab Home, go to the radio button properties, delete the default text and replace the images with the newly uploaded ones. Normal and pressed images are inactive. Selected and focused images are active. Repeat this procedure for all tabs with the corresponding images. Now we need to check whether the buttons are working or not. For that, click the preview button and test it. You will see that the tab buttons are working. When a tab button is clicked, the scene should change to the corresponding scene. Also, when the next button is clicked, it should move to the next scene. To control this scene switching, we need to add a state machine. To do so, right-click on State Machine in the Solutions Explorer and select Add and then New Item. Make sure the state machine is selected and rename it to Menu State Machine. Once the new state machine is available, double-click on it to open the State Machine editor. Check if the Is Global box in the State Machine properties is not selected to make sure we are working with a local state machine. After doing so, first create a state. Then go ahead and create an initial state and add a transition from the initial state to your created state. To do so, drag and drop the initial state icon from the toolbar. Drag and drop the transition icon into the initial state and drag it into state. Since we have 4 different scenes, we will need to create 4 states in the state machine. Add them and rename each state according to the scene names: home, climate, phone, and options. First, create an initial state and a transition from it to home. Then create 4 more transitions. 1 from home to climate, then climate to phone, then home to options, and finally from options to home. Now we need to add entry and exit behaviors so the scene transitions will work properly. In the State Properties, click the plus button to add an on-entry action. Select Perform Transition Request as the desired action. Then add the transition request behavior to the on-entry actions by dragging and dropping it from the toolbox. Set the request type to Activate and set the identifier to Scene Home. This means when the home state is entered, it will send Scene Home Activate as a transition request. Next, again click the plus button to add another on-entry action and select Send Value as Event. Set the value type to bool and make sure to check the checkbox next to it. Then specify the target node and select the Tab Home Radio button from the Scene menu tabs. This means when the home state is entered, the Tab Home button becomes true to T, means Scene active. Now set the on-exit behavior by selecting Perform Transition Request and dragging the transition request behavior into on-exit actions. The request type to deactivate and set the identifier to Scene Home. This means when the home state exits, it will send Scene Home deactivate as a transition request. Repeat this process analogously for the state's climate, phone, and options. Identifiers of transition requests are each scene name. Target nodes of Send Value as Event are each radio button. When the state is changed, perform transitions and send radio button true. When the next button is clicked, we need to change each state. For that, set the next button as the sender. Select the transition and specify the next button. Repeat this process for the other 3 transitions. As a next step, when the next button is clicked, the scene should change. To achieve this, add an event bridge to the next button. When the tab button is clicked, the scene should change. To achieve this, add a state machine behavior to the stack layout under the group box. Set state machine to recently created state machine. Set target node of previous event bridge. Target is the stack layout. Navigate to the Render Targets window. Set the sequence number of the cameras. They must be unique. Scene menu tabs is 10. Scene Home is 1. Climate is 2. Options is 3. Phone is 4. Enable all cameras. Now we need to show the menu tab's viewport at the bottom. For that, set the top value to 430 and set the height to 50. Check if everything is working, click the Generate and Play button. Now you can see that the next button works. To make the tab buttons work, add transitions for the tab buttons in the state machine. Add 4 transitions. Then select each transition and set the corresponding tab button as the sender. For example, set Tab Home, Tab Climate, Tab Phone, and Tab Options as senders for corresponding the transitions. Now check it again. The tab buttons are working. And the next button is also working. For a better view, we can add transitions for each scene. To do this, click on the Transition Rules editor. Then add a new definition by clicking the plus button. Select any scene as the source and choose Fade and Scale. Next, select any scene as the destination. Now check it. For checking, click the Generate and Play button. You can see that the transition is also working. This is the end of this tutorial video. Thank you for watching.